Michael here with Total Physical Therapy, and today I am discussing one of my favorite subject matters. And that subject is the access to physical therapy in the absence of a prescription. Now, I may be a little bit biased on this subject matter. I am a licensed physical therapist working in my home state of Texas, and yes, here in Texas, you can come see me without a prescription. But let's talk about why the U.S., the U.S. Virgin Islands, Washington, D.C., as well as our very own U.S. military have all made the decision to allow you to have some level of access to physical therapy in the absence of a prescription. Now, this idea is referred to as direct access, and direct access was merely brought to the forefront because of three main topics, three main factors that led each state to consider whether or not you should see a physical therapist without a prescription, an order, or a referral from any other healthcare provider. Topic number one, the concept around cost was a consideration. And study after study proved that traditional cost associated with musculoskeletal and neuromuscular conditions was significantly lower, both for the consumer as well as for insurance companies, when physical therapy was the first line of intervention. Unfortunately, a lot of individuals that still find their way to physical therapy are doing so as an afterthought. They've tried interventions ABC, and they've had diagnostic imaging XYZ, and oftentimes, sadly, physical therapy is one of those quote-unquote last-ditch efforts. So the cost savings comes from the fact that if you were going first to physical therapy for qualified conditions, you are more likely to save money for yourself as well as for your insurance plan. Now, the second factor that was a consideration was efficacy. What we do as a profession, was it useful for the conditions that we indicate that we treat? This too, through numerous studies, has been proven that our treatments are efficacious. They work, and they can work in the favor of not only giving you great results, but giving you results in a timely manner. The third factor, and arguably the most important factor of consideration, was safety. Was physical therapy a safe alternative in the absence of a referral? Once again, those studies prove that physical therapy is safe. What does this mean to you? Well, ultimately, it saves you money, it gives you results that you're seeking, and it does so in a safe environment. Win, win, win. Check all three of those things off your checkbox. Now, we have some people talk to us about the newness of this, and being here in Texas, sadly, we were the 49th state in the country to adopt this type of legislation. So to Texans, it's still kind of fresh and still kind of new, given the fact that we're only a few years removed from that. But let's talk a little bit about the first state to implement this type of strategy. In fact, the first state to implement in direct access provisions was Nebraska in 1957. So Nebraska was the first state to the party, and even furthermore, they had unrestricted access, which means there are absolutely no regulations or rules about you seeing a therapist in the absence of a prescription. Fast forward to 2022, and Nebraska is still that way. And over the course of those years and those decades, they have always remained that way. In fact, there's been no state in the entire country that has rescinded any of those rights for direct access. This means that there has been no legislation on every state level that has determined that either the costs, the efficacy, or the safety was at risk. Okay, so now that you know that Nebraska was the first to do it in 1957, you know that those other areas have access that I mentioned. Let's talk about 40% of the country have unrestricted access. Again, meaning there are no barriers to entering into a physical therapy facility. You simply walk into a physical therapy clinic and you're seen. 40% of the country is that way. And of those 20 states, the majority of those states, Nebraska included, back in 1957, but the rest of those, they adopted these strategies back in the 1980s. So now, fast forward multiple decades, and 40% of our country still has unrestricted access. That should bring a sense of calmness to you about the cost savings, about the efficacy, and about the safety of physical therapy. Earlier, I mentioned our U.S. military, and for over 50 years, our U.S. military on bases have allowed unrestricted access to physical therapy for not only our men and women serving in our military, but also to their families. Furthermore, physical therapists within the U.S. military have the ability to order certain imaging as well as prescribe certain medications. Now, having watched this video, I hope you now come to the conclusion and the understanding that yes, you have the capacity to see a physical therapist without a prescription. It is cost effective, it is an effective treatment option, and specifically, it's a safe treatment option. I hope you guys found this information valuable. Comment down below if you have any other questions, comments, or concerns. Have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.